Michael Turner's hands were shaking so hard, he could barely push aside the branches in front of him. The forest was silent, too silent. No birds, no wind. Nothing but the heavy thump of his heartbeat pounding against his ribs as he stepped into the clearing he hoped he would never see again. His flashlight beam trembled over the ground, and then it stopped. There, lying in the dry leaves, was his son, Evan Turner, the boy he had raised, the boy who loved hiking and old video games, the boy who told him he'd be home by sundown. Evan wasn't moving. His clothes were torn, his skin pale, and the entire scene looked wrong, violently wrong. There were marks on the ground, broken branches, and signs of a struggle everywhere. Michael's knees buckled. A sound escaped him, half a cry, half a breath, as he rushed forward, sliding to the ground beside his son. "Evan, Evan, please." His voice cracked. His hands hovered over the boy, afraid to touch him, afraid to confirm what he already knew. Evan wasn't breathing. His chest wasn't rising. His eyes were half open, staring at nothing, as if the forest itself had stolen the light from them. Michael felt the whole world drop out from under him. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. This forest, this old abandoned forest the locals avoided, couldn't be the place where his son's life ended. But something else was wrong too. Footprints. More than one pair. Some heading toward the clearing. Some heading away. And one detail, one small but terrifying detail, froze Michael completely. Evan's phone was placed neatly beside him. Not dropped, not thrown, not damaged, placed, as if someone wanted it found. Michael felt cold run through him. The forest felt tighter now, like it was closing in. Somewhere behind him, a stick snapped. He spun around, only to see nothing but trees. But he knew he wasn't alone. Someone had been here. Someone might still be here. Before he could even decide whether to call out for help, a sudden blast of wind rushed through the trees, swirling leaves around his son's body as if the forest itself was trying to hide the evidence. Michael backed away slowly, hands trembling, brain racing. Who would do this to his son? Why leave him out here? Why place the phone? Why? Another crack of a branch. This one closer. Too close. Michael turned sharply, flashlight cutting through the dark. And that's when he saw it. A shadow. Tall. Still. Watching him from between the trees. He couldn't see a face. He couldn't see clothing. Just the shape of someone who had stayed behind. Michael opened his mouth to shout, but the figure stepped back and disappeared into the dark. Michael tried to chase after it, but his legs wouldn't move fast enough. The figure slipped deeper into the forest, swallowed by the shadows, leaving Michael alone with the fear, the silence, and the body of his son. His breathing sped up. His chest tightened. His mind spun wildly between grief, fear, and rage. And that's when something even worse happened. Evan's phone, the one placed beside his body, lit up. A notification flashed across the screen. One new voice message received. 2:17 a.m. Michael froze. His son had been missing since 7 p.m. Why would there be a voice message at 2:17 a.m.? He picked up the phone slowly, his fingers cold and unsteady. The message was from an unknown number. His thumb hovered over the play button. Was this the last thing his son heard? Was this from the person in the forest? Was this a clue? A threat? A mistake? A warning? Michael swallowed hard and pressed play. There was static, rustling, breathing, low, heavy breathing. Then a voice whispered, barely audible. "He shouldn't have followed me." Michael dropped the phone as if it burned him. He staggered backward, mind spinning, heart slamming in his chest. Who said that? When was this recorded? Was Evan alive when this happened? Why was he following someone? Who was the person in the trees? Why hide? Why leave the phone? Why whisper that? Everything felt twisted, wrong, terrifying. Michael picked the phone back up with trembling hands, but before he could replay the message, he heard something behind him again. Footstep. Slow this time. Deliberate. Not running, not sneaking, approaching. Michael turned and saw a beam of light sweeping through the trees. For a moment he thought the figure had returned. For a moment he thought this was the killer coming back to finish what they started. But the light grew brighter. Voices followed. Mr. Turner? Michael Turner. It was law enforcement. Sheriff Daniels rushed into the clearing with 2 deputies behind him. They came to a stop the moment they saw the scene and the look in Michael's eyes. Michael pointed at the trees desperately. As someone was just there, watching. They were right there. Daniels looked into the darkness, then turned back to Michael. Sir, we didn't see anyone on our way in. No, Michael shouted, stepping forward. I'm telling you, someone was here. They did this to my son. They left him here. They left a message, listen. He held out the phone, but his hands were shaking so violently that Daniels had to take it gently from him. We'll listen to it at the station, Daniels said, his voice low and controlled. Right now, we need to secure this scene. The deputies moved around the body, careful and slow, shining lights on the disturbed leaves, the footprints, the broken branches. Michael felt dizzy. His heart hurt. His head throbbed. Everything was a blur. Officers whispered things he couldn't understand. One deputy knelt near a footprint, comparing shoe sizes. Another marked the position of the phone. Michael could barely breathe. He looked down at his son again and felt the world collapse all over. This wasn't a nightmare. This wasn't a mistake. This was real. Something terrible had happened here. Something violent. Something deliberate. And somewhere in this forest, the person responsible was still moving freely. Daniels placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. We're going to figure out what happened here. I promise. Michael didn't respond. He was staring at the trees, the darkness, the space where the figure had stood. Then, one of the deputies called out suddenly. Sheriff, over here. You need to see this. Daniels hurried over. The deputy pointed at something wedged under a fallen log. Daniels pulled out his flashlight, leaned in, examined it closely. His expression changed. Like he recognized it. Like it meant something. Something bad. Michael stumbled toward them. What is it? What did you find? Tell me. Daniels didn't answer. Not at first. He slowly reached down, picked up the object, and held it under the flashlight so Michael could see. It was a wallet that didn't belong to Evan. Daniels opened it, and inside was a driver's license. The name on the ID froze Michael's blood. It was someone they both knew. Someone from town. Someone Michael would have never suspected. Someone who had a reason to hate Evan. Daniels looked up at Michael, face pale, voice tight. Michael, we need you to stay calm. This belongs to... A gunshot exploded through the forest. The officers froze. Michael dropped to the ground. And the entire clearing plunged into chaos. As someone out there fired again. The first gunshot cracked through the trees so loudly that every officer in the clearing ducked at once. Michael hit the ground hard, covering his head with his hands. His ears rang as the echo bounced off the trees and vanished into the dark woods. Down. Everybody down. Sheriff Daniels shouted. The deputies scrambled behind the nearest trees, flashlights slicing through the darkness as they tried to locate the shooter. Another shot thundered through the forest. Closer this time, sharper, like it came from just beyond the clearing. Leaves shook loose from the branches above them. Michael felt his breath catch in his throat. Was the shooter the same person who killed Evan? Was he still watching? Was he firing at them now because they found the wallet? Everything in the forest felt alive. Every shadow felt like it was hiding someone. Sheriff, I can't see the source. Deputy Harris yelled, crouching near a stump. It's bouncing off the trees, hard to place. Daniels growled under his breath. They're trying to scare us off the scene. Michael peeked up from the leaves, heart pounding like it wanted to escape his chest. Is someone shooting at me? He whispered. Daniels did not answer. His silence told Michael everything. Deputy Brooks scanned the tree line. Sheriff, we need to move Turner out of the open. If the shooter's targeting him. Another gunshot tore through the air. This one hit a tree trunk just inches above where Michael had been kneeling earlier. Pieces of bark exploded into the air. Michael froze. His body went cold. That shot was not random. That shot was aimed. Daniels grabbed him by the arm and dragged him behind a fallen log. Stay low. Do not move unless I tell you. Michael's voice trembled. Who's doing this? Who would? That's what we're going to find out, Daniels said quickly. But right now we need you alive. The deputies spread out, moving deeper into the forest in slow, careful steps, guns drawn, flashlights shaking. One deputy called out, Sheriff, we might have movement on the ridge. North side. Daniels raised his voice. Identify yourself. This is law enforcement. Silence. Then, the sound of someone running. Fast. Through the brush. Twigs snapping. Leaves scattering. On the ridge. They're fleeing. Harris shouted. Do not pursue alone. Daniels barked. Stay in groups. Michael tried to look up, but Daniels pushed him back down gently. Not yet. The footsteps grew faint and then disappeared into the vast stretch of forest. After almost 30 seconds of tense silence, the forest returned to the eerie quiet it had before the shots. Too quiet. Like it wanted to swallow the noise and hide the truth again. Harris jogged back into the clearing. They're gone, Sheriff. Brooks followed behind, breathing hard. I saw movement, but it was too dark to get an ID. The shooter knew these woods. They moved like they've been out here before. Daniels clenched his jaw. Everyone stay alert. They may circle back. Michael slowly stood up, still shaking. He looked down at the wallet, lying in the dirt where Daniels dropped it when the gunshots started. A familiar face stared up from the driver's license. A name he knew. A person he never imagined would hurt his son. Sheriff, Michael said weakly. Tell me the truth. Is that really? Daniels quickly retrieved the wallet and shut it. We'll discuss everything at the station. No. Michael insisted, stepping toward him despite his shaking legs. That's someone I know. That's someone Evan knew. Why was that in the woods? Why is someone shooting at us? Sheriff, what aren't you telling me? Daniels looked torn, glancing between Michael and the deputies. Then he sighed and put a hand on Michael's shoulder. Okay, I'll tell you what I know so far, but you need to keep calm. I'm calm, Michael said, though his voice cracked. Daniels opened the wallet again, just enough for Michael to see the ID. It belongs to Dylan Graves. Michael's stomach dropped. Dylan. The kid from 2 houses down. The boy Evan grew up with. The boy who used to come over after school. The boy who used to play basketball with Evan in the driveway. The boy who stopped talking to Evan a year ago. The boy whose mother had come to Michael's door 3 months earlier, crying, begging him to tell Evan to stay away from Dylan's life. The boy rumored to have fallen in with a dangerous group outside of town. Michael's voice cracked. Dylan? Dylan was here? Why would his wallet be at the place where Evan? We don't know yet, Daniels said firmly. It might have been dropped by accident. It might have been planted. We cannot jump to. He was here, Michael said, backing a step away. He was here when my son. A wave of nausea hit him. But Daniels wasn't finished. There's more, he said cautiously. Michael looked up slowly. What more? Daniels held up the wallet. There's a bus ticket inside. One way. To another state. Departure time is tomorrow morning. Michael felt like he'd been hit in the chest. Dylan was going to leave town, he whispered. Run away. Daniels nodded grimly. And if he's connected to what happened here? He's trying to escape, Michael finished. The deputies exchanged looks. Sheriff, Harris said quietly, the shooter might have been trying to slow us down so Dylan could get out. Or, Brooks added, the shooter was Dylan himself. Michael stared at the ground, his heart sinking deeper with every second. Could Dylan have hurt Evan? Could he have left him out here? Could he be the shadow Michael saw hiding in the trees? His mind raced. He needed answers. He needed truth. He needed justice. And he wasn't going to let the sheriff or anyone else slow him down. But before he could say another word, Daniels raised his hand. Everyone stay quiet. The officers froze. Michael looked around, confused. The sheriff pointed toward the ridge. Faint light. A flicker. A glow between the trees. Harris whispered, "Is that a fire?" The glow grew brighter. Orange. Moving. Spreading. Brooks whispered sharply, "Sheriff, someone lit a fire up there." Michael felt dread seep into his bones. The fire was small now, just a flickering glow, but it was growing. Daniels lowered his voice. "That ridge is dry brush. If that fire spreads, it will wipe out this entire forest." Brooks frowned. "Sheriff, you think the shooter started it to destroy evidence?" Daniels didn't answer. He didn't need to. Michael's breath caught. If the fire reached Evan's body, if it reached the footprints, the broken branches, the tracks, the wallet, it would destroy everything. All evidence, all clues, all truth. Michael stepped forward. "We have to stop it. We have to put it out." Daniels grabbed his arm. "No. You are not going up there. Let my deputies handle it." Brooks and Harris drew closer. "We'll take the north trail," Harris said. "It should lead us above the ridge." "Be quick," Daniels ordered. "If that spreads, we lose the scene." The deputies sprinted toward the glowing ridge, disappearing between the trees. Daniels turned to Michael. "We need to get you out of here before that fire spreads. You're in danger." Michael shook his head. "I'm not leaving my son." "We'll handle your son," Daniels said, his tone softening but firm. "You need to trust me." Michael didn't want to trust anyone. Not after what he saw. Not after what he heard on that phone. Not after seeing Dylan's wallet. He started to argue when suddenly, a scream tore through the forest. High, sharp, full of terror. It came from the ridge. It came from the direction Harris and Brooks had gone. Michael and Daniels locked eyes. "Move!" Daniels shouted, sprinting toward the sound. Michael didn't hesitate. He followed, branches whipping his arms as he ran, lungs burning, heart pounding. The forest grew hotter as they approached the ridge. Smoke curled between the trees. The fire was growing fast. Another scream. This one weaker. Pain. Daniels yelled, "Harris? Brooks? Call out!" No answer. They pushed through a curtain of smoke into a small clearing, and Michael stumbled to a stop. On the ground, Harris was lying on his side, coughing violently, face streaked with soot. His uniform sleeve was burned. Daniels knelt beside him. "Harris, what happened? Where's Brooks?" Harris coughed again, pointing weakly toward the dense smoke. "We tried to put it out," he gasped. "But someone was up there. Someone pushed Brooke. I didn't see who." They ran deeper. Brooks fell. He rolled down the drop. Michael felt a chill despite the rising heat of the fire. Daniels stood, eyes narrowing. "We need to reach him." Michael stepped forward. "Sheriff, I'm coming. I don't care what you say." Daniels didn't have time to protest. The fire crackled louder, spreading toward them. Smoke rolled over the ridge. The forest glowed orange. Michael squinted toward the drop-off where Brooks had fallen. He couldn't see anything. Just smoke. Fire. Shadows. Then, a figure appeared through the smoke on the ridge above them. Tall. Phil. Watching them. Michael's heart stuttered. It was the same shape he saw earlier. The same height. The same stance. "Hey!" Daniels shouted. "Stop right there." The figure didn't run this time. Didn't hide. It just stood there, staring down at them, holding something in its hand. A flashlight? A weapon? A piece of clothing? Michael took a step back. "Sheriff," he whispered shakily, What are they holding?" Daniels lifted his own flashlight, and that's when the figure raised its arm. Michael's eyes widened. It wasn't a flashlight. It was something else. Something he recognized. Something he never expected to see. The figure lifted Evan's backpack. The same backpack his son wore the night he disappeared. The figure stepped closer to the edge of the ridge, holding the backpack out like a threat, and then it threw it down the drop. The backpack tumbled through the smoke, landing somewhere far below. Michael gasped. Daniels drew his weapon. "Stop. Don't move." But the figure did move, turned, and ran straight into the burning forest. Daniels cursed loudly. Michael stared at the ridge, chest heaving, stomach twisting, grief and rage swirling together. Someone had Evan's belongings. Someone was still here. Someone wanted to destroy evidence. Someone wanted to send a message. And now, or someone had dragged a police officer into a steep drop. Daniels grabbed Michael's arm again. "We need to get Brooks. Now." Michael nodded, barely able to speak. They pushed deeper toward the drop-off, smoke thickening, the heat rising. And when they finally reached the ledge and looked down, Michael's breath caught. Brooks wasn't moving, but that wasn't the worst part. Something else was lying next to him. Something the figure had left behind. Something that made Michael's blood turn to ice. It was a handwritten note, pinned to Brooks's vest, scrawled in uneven letters, and it said, "He followed me too." Michael felt the world tilt. Brooks was unconscious. The fire was growing. The figure had escaped. And now there was a message. Daniels whispered, voice tight with dread. "Michael, this wasn't just an attack." He looked at the note again. "This is a warning." Smoke rolled over the forest floor like a low gray fog, curling around Michael's shoes as he stared at the handwritten note pinned to Deputy Brooks's vest. The words looked rushed, uneven, desperate. "He followed me too." Michael's stomach twisted. His mind raced with questions that had no answers. Who wrote it? Was it the same person who whispered on Evan's phone? Was it Dylan? Or someone else entirely? Sheriff Daniels ripped the note free, holding it close to his dim flashlight. "This handwriting," he muttered. "This was done fast. Very fast." Michael swallowed hard, his throat dry from smoke and fear. "Sheriff, what does it mean? Why say two? Who else did he follow?" Daniels didn't answer. He was already kneeling beside Brooks, checking his pulse. "He's alive," the sheriff said. "But he took a hard fall." Michael exhaled shakily. He barely knew the deputy, but the sight of another person hurt because of this nightmare made the grief inside him spike all over again. "What about the person who pushed him?" Michael asked. "The one who had Evan's backpack?" Daniels stood slowly, his face grim. "They're toying with us. They're sending messages, burning evidence, leaving note. This isn't random. This person knows these woods and has something to hide. And Dylan," Michael whispered, thinking of the wallet. "Is he part of this?" Daniels placed a firm hand on Michael's shoulder. "I don't know yet, but we will find out." A sudden crack from above made both men flinch. A tree branch, burned through by the spreading fire, snapped and fell, slamming into the ground just a few feet away. Daniels cursed. "We have less than 10 minutes before this fire blocks the way back." They had to move. Now. "Harris!" Daniels shouted. "We need a stretcher." "I'm coming, Sheriff," Harris called back, stumbling through the smoke with a collapsible stretcher over his shoulder. Together, the two deputies loaded Brooks's unconscious body onto it. "Michael," Daniels said firmly, "you stay between me and Harris. If that shooter is still out here, I want you protected." Michael nodded shakily. As they moved away from the drop-off, the fire crackled louder, climbing up the ridge behind them. Smoke thickened, burning his lungs. He glanced back once, hoping, praying, to see the figure again. But the ridge was empty now. The person who attacked his son. The one who whispered on the phone. The one who pushed Brooks. They were still out there, but impossible to see. They hurried downhill through the trees, staying low where the smoke wasn't as thick. The deeper they went, the darker the forest became again, away from the fire's glow. But even in darkness, Michael felt watched. Every twig snap felt like footstep. Every shadow felt like a person. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper. He kept replaying the voice message in his head. He shouldn't have followed me. Who said that? What exactly had Evan followed? How long had this nightmare been unfolding before anyone realized? The group reached the lower path where the fire hadn't spread yet. They slowed down, catching their breath. Daniels checked Harris. "You good?" Harris nodded, though his face was pale. "Just smoke. I'll be fine." "Get Brooks to the ambulance," Daniels ordered. "And call in backup. I want the entire ridge closed off." Harris nodded. He and the unconscious deputy disappeared down the trail toward the access road. That left only Daniels and Michael. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. Daniels turned to Michael. "We're going to the station. You need to go somewhere safe." Michael stiffened. "No. I'm not going home. Someone is out here killing people and destroying evidence. My son." "I know," Daniels said gently. "But I can't risk you wandering off. Not after what we just saw." Michael's jaw tightened. "I'm not wandering. I'm helping find out what happened." Daniels sighed. "Look, I'll let you help. But we do this together. No running, no splitting up, no acting on your own. Deal?" Michael nodded. "Deal." They began to walk again, heading down the sloping path toward the clearing where Evan's body still waited. Michael could barely bring himself to face that reality again, but he needed to. He needed to see everything. He needed to understand. When they reached the clearing, the scene felt different. Colder. Heavier. Like the forest itself knew something terrible had happened. The officers who arrived earlier were now gone, evacuated because of the fire. Only a small perimeter of evidence markers remained, glowing faintly in the darkness. Evan's body, covered now by a tarp, was waiting for the coroner. Michael froze at the sight of it. His chest tightened. His legs trembled. The world around him blurred. Daniels stepped beside him. "We'll take him home," he said softly. "I promise you that." Michael blinked hard, tears burning his eyes. He wanted to speak, but no words came out. Then, something across the clearing caught his attention. A small light near the old pine tree. A faint glow. Michael squinted. "Sheriff, what is that?" Daniels turned, following his gaze. A phone. It looked like another phone, different from Evan's. It was glowing faintly, screen cracked, lying half buried in the dirt. Daniels approached it carefully. "Don't touch it," Michael warned instinctively. "I'm not," Daniels said, kneeling next to it. "Let me see if it's still on." He picked it up with a gloved hand and tilted the screen. Michael leaned over his shoulder. The lock screen was visible. A picture of a dog, one Michael recognized. His neighbor's dog. Dylan's dog. Michael felt his chest drop. "Sheriff, that's Dylan's phone." Daniels didn't speak for a few seconds. Then he muttered, "Well, that confirms he was here tonight." Michael backed up a step, dizzy. "Sheriff, it's his phone. His wallet. A fire. Gunshot. A note. Why isn't he staying? Why isn't he saying anything? Why is he running?" Daniels didn't answer. He stared at the phone screen again. Then something strange happened. The cracked screen flickered. Notifications appeared. 3 messages. All unread. From someone listed as unknown contact. Michael's chest tightened. Daniels tapped the notification preview, careful not to open anything fully. The message previews read: 1. He's following you now. 2. Get rid of the phone. 3. Do not go back to the clearing. Michael felt a shiver crawl up his spine. They were texting Dylan, Michael whispered. Someone was telling him what to do. Someone who knew he was here. Daniels nodded slowly. "This isn't just Dylan running away," he said. "He's not working alone. Someone is guiding him." Michael felt his legs weaken. His grief turned into something else, fear mixed with anger. He wanted to scream. He wanted answers. He wanted justice. But before he could speak, the forest around them creaked, loudly. Michael froze. Daniels looked up sharply. From deeper in the woods came the unmistakable sound of something heavy moving, stepping over branches, approaching. Daniels raised his weapon. "Michael, stay behind me." The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Slow. Deliberate. Michael's heart pounded. He clutched his chest. The hair on his arms stood straight up. The footsteps stopped. They were close enough that he could hear breathing. Daniels steadied his gun. "Come out where I can see you," he commanded. "Hands up." Silence. A moment passed. Then, from behind the old pine, a figure stepped forward, slowly. Not the figure from the ridge. Not Dylan. Not someone Michael recognized. It was a man. Tall. Wearing dark clothes. Hands raised. Face pale in the flashlight beam. Daniels kept his gun locked. "Who are you? What are you doing out here?" The man didn't answer. He stared straight at Michael. Not the sheriff. Not the gun. At Michael. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "I tried to warn him," the man said shakily. "I tried to stop him. But he wouldn't listen." Daniels stepped closer. "Stop who? Who are you talking about?" The man took a trembling breath. Then he said something that made Michael's entire body go numb. "I saw what happened to your son," the man whispered, eyes locked on Michael. "I was there." Michael's mouth went dry. Daniels shouted, "Get on your knees now." The man lifted his hands higher, but did not kneel. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket. Daniels swung his gun up. "Do not move." But the man pulled something out. A folded piece of paper. He held it out toward Michael. "For you," the man whispered. Daniels grabbed the paper before Michael could touch it. He unfolded it under the flashlight. Michael leaned in, heart racing. The message was short. Only one sentence, written in the same uneven handwriting as the note pinned to Brooks. It read, "Dylan isn't the one you should fear." Michael stepped back. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. He felt sick. Daniels glared at the stranger. "Who wrote this? Who told you to bring this?" Before the man could answer, a gunshot exploded from the trees. The man jerked violently and collapsed to the ground. Michael screamed. Daniels spun around, firing into the darkness, but the shooter was already gone. Smoke drifted between the trees. The forest echoed with the fading sound of the gunshot, and Michael realized something horrifying. Someone was killing every witness, every clue, every thread of truth. The forest wasn't hiding one killer. It was hiding many secrets, and now the only person who claimed to know what happened to Evan was lying dead at their feet. The officers froze when they heard the shout. It wasn't a normal cry. It was the kind that came from someone who had just watched their entire world collapse. Deputy Cole moved first, pushing through the thick bushes as the beam of his flashlight shook in his trembling hand. Sheriff Dalton followed close behind, calling out, "Sir, step away from the area. We're coming to you." But Michael didn't move. He stayed kneeling in that shadowed clearing, gripping the torn fabric he found on the ground, his son's hoodie. His fingers shaking so hard he could barely hold it. His breath came in fast, broken gasps as he stared at the disturbed leaves, the drag marks, and something else the officers noticed immediately. The ground told a violent story, even if no one could understand all of it yet. "Mr. Turner," Sheriff Dalton said carefully as he crouched beside him, "I need you to take a deep breath and tell me exactly what you saw." Michael opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. He just pointed. His arm shook as he stretched it toward the base of an old, rotting log where Cole's flashlight highlighted something small, something that shouldn't have been there. A sneaker. Evan's sneaker. The same one Michael had bought him last Christmas. Dalton swallowed hard. "Cole, radio this in. We need a full search team here now. Mark this area. No one steps inside that circle." The forest was silent except for Michael's quiet sobs. Cole backed up to avoid disturbing the ground and lifted his radio. "Dispatch, we have potential evidence belonging to the missing juvenile, Evan Turner. We need full support at coordinates." Cole never finished his sentence. A distant snap echoed through the trees. The three men froze. Then another sound followed, a rustle, not natural, something deliberate. It came from somewhere beyond the clearing, deep in the dark. Dalton stood, hand moving toward his holster. "Who's there?" he yelled. No answer. Just another slow, dragging rustle. Michael wiped his tears and looked around wildly. "Is someone out here? Did someone do this to my boy?" Dalton motioned for Cole to kill the flashlight beam. Darkness swallowed them instantly. The sheriff listened. The night listened back. Then, just as slowly as it started, the sound faded. Cole whispered, "Sheriff, we're not alone." Dalton didn't respond. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. They waited in complete silence for nearly a full minute until the search team truck headlights appeared through the trees. The instant the lights washed over them, the sheriff finally spoke again. "Mr. Turner," he said gently, "we're going to find your son. Whatever happened here, we're going to get answers." But as the team set up perimeter lights and began scanning the area, something else caught their attention. A set of footprints, deep, uneven, leading away from the clearing. Not Evans. Too big. And they weren't alone. Two sets. Dalton crouched beside them, studying the soil. "These are fresh. Hours old. Someone was here with him. Someone stayed after." Michael covered his face with both hands as the truth sank in. Someone had taken his son into these woods. And someone had walked away. The search dogs barked in the distance, pulling handlers toward a narrow path that wound between the trees. The moment the sheriff heard one of the handlers shout, he knew they had found another lead. Maybe even the next piece of the puzzle. He stood and turned to Michael. "Stay with Cole. Don't move from this spot." Then Dalton jogged toward the sound, branches whipping his jacket as he followed the narrow path. When he reached the dog team, he saw what made them stop. A small handheld flashlight. Familiar. Scratched. Still slightly warm. Dalton picked it up with gloved hands and whispered under his breath, "Evan." Before he could process the find, one of the younger deputies shouted, "Sheriff, you're gonna want to see this." Dalton hurried toward the call. The deputies were gathered around an old, moss-covered tree stump. Their lights revealed something carved deep into the wood. Sloppy, rushed, jagged letters that looked like they were scratched with a blade or rock. 3 words. "He is mine." Dalton felt his blood run cold. Behind him, one of the deputies whispered, "Sheriff, what kind of person writes something like that?" Dalton didn't answer, because he genuinely didn't know. He ordered the area sealed off immediately and rushed back toward the clearing to speak with Michael. But as he approached, he saw the father standing now, staring off into the darkness as if trying to see the stranger who had left those words carved into the tree. When Dalton reached him, Michael turned slowly, his face pale but his voice steady. "Sheriff," he whispered, "whoever took my son, they're still out here." Dalton opened his mouth to reply, but before he could say a single word, a scream echoed through the forest. Not from an officer, not from a search dog, a human scream, high, sharp, and full of terror. Every searchlight snapped toward the sound. Deputies grabbed their radios, dogs barked wildly, and Michael, without hesitation, took off running toward the direction of the scream. Dalton yelled after him, "Michael, stop, don't go in there." But Michael didn't stop, because in that scream, he heard something, a tone, a panic, a voice he recognized, a voice he had prayed he would never hear in pain again. He believed, he felt, that the scream belonged to Evan. Dalton and 3 deputies sprinted after him, crashing through the underbrush as they fought to keep pace. Branches tore at their clothes, roots caught their boot, but Michael didn't slow down. He ran like a father whose hope and fear collided inside him, driving him forward with a strength no one could match. They reached a steep slope just as the scream echoed again, farther away this time, but still unmistakable. Michael nearly slipped as he scrambled down, grabbing at trees to steady himself. The deputies closed in behind him, desperate to keep him safe. Then, suddenly, Michael stopped, dead still. Dalton almost slammed into him. "Michael, what?" But then the sheriff saw it too. A figure, standing between the trees, tall, still, watching them. The figure didn't move, didn't run, didn't hide. It simply stood there, half hidden in shadow, head tilted slightly to the side as though studying them, gauging their fear. Dalton's hand went instinctively to his holster. "Sheriff," one deputy whispered, voice trembling, "is that?" But the rest of his sentence was cut off when the figure suddenly stepped back into the darkness and vanished as if the forest swallowed him whole. And at that exact moment, another scream tore through the woods. Closer than before. Much closer. Dalton's heart pounded. Michael whispered, "Evan, Evan," and the entire search team stood frozen for half a second. Just half a second, before all hell broke loose. The woods exploded with movement. Officers ran in every direction, dogs pulled their handlers forward, and radios crackled with overlapping voices shouting for backup, directions, and location markers. But Michael didn't hear any of it. Not the yelling, not the barking, not the sound of deputies scrambling through the underbrush. He heard only one thing: the scream. The scream he believed, deep in his bones, belonged to his son. "Evan!" he yelled, sprinting toward the sound. "Michael, stop!" Sheriff Dalton bellowed behind him, but it didn't matter. A father who thinks he hears his child suffering becomes unstoppable, and Michael Turner proved it. He charged forward with a wild, desperate speed, dodging tree trunks, leaping over roots, shoving aside branches that whipped his arms and face. Dalton and 3 deputies chased after him, trying to keep him in sight. Their flashlights bounced wildly, beams slicing through trees and shadows, revealing glimpses of moving shapes. Officers, dogs, bushes, and maybe, just maybe, the same tall figure from moments ago. "Watch your left!" one deputy yelled as Michael nearly collided with a fallen tree. He barely heard the warning, throwing himself over the trunk and landing hard on the other side. "Michael, please!" Dalton yelled again. "You don't know what's up ahead." But Michael didn't slow. Everything inside him, every instinct, every fear, every memory of his son's laugh, his smile, his promise to be home by dinner, pushed him forward. He felt like he was running straight into the heart of something dark and alive. The scream came again, closer, clearer, sharpened with pain. And this time, Michael didn't just hear it, he felt it, like it shot straight through his chest. "That's him," he cried out. "That's my boy." He tore through a curtain of hanging vines and stumbled into a narrow, hidden ditch he hadn't seen. He fell forward, hit the ground hard, rolled, and scrambled back up in one motion. His palms were scraped, his knees stung, his lungs burned, but he pushed on. Dalton wasn't far behind now. "Michael, wait. We don't know who's in these woods." But they all knew exactly who. The man who carved "He is mine." The man who left footprints next to Evan's. The man who had been standing in the trees watching them. The man who now seemed to be leading them deeper into the forest. Michael stumbled into a narrow clearing, one that looked wrong. The air felt heavier here, colder somehow. The trees leaned inward like they were listening. He stood still, chest heaving, trying to hear another sound. Then, a rustle. To his right. Michael turned sharply, scanning the darkness. "Evan," he whispered. Another rustle. Then a soft whimper. Michael's heart nearly burst. He spun toward the sound and shouted, "Evan, I'm coming!" He ran. Dalton and the deputies burst into the clearing just in time to see Michael disappear into a tight corridor of trees. "Move!" Dalton barked, and the officers squeezed through after him. The woods grew uneven here. Thick branches formed natural archways overhead. The ground dipped and rose in unpredictable slope. Flashlights flashed across bits of broken glass, old beer cans, and scraps of fabric that hinted other people had been here before, many years ago. But someone had been here recently too. A torn piece of clothing dangled from a bush. A A crushed water bottle lay in the dirt. A fresh footprint stamped into the soft mud. And then, a small, familiar object catching the light. Deputy Cole scooped it up. "Sheriff, it's Evan's phone." Dalton took it, turning it over in his hand. The screen was cracked. The case was muddy. But it was unmistakably Evan's. The one his dad had bought him after his last report card. Cole looked up at Dalton. "That scream, that had to be him, Sheriff." Dalton didn't answer. He didn't trust his voice to stay steady. Instead, he clipped the phone to his vest and pressed forward. Ahead, they heard Michael shout again. "Evan, answer me." His voice cracked on the last word. The deputies picked up speed. Then suddenly, Michael stopped. So suddenly that Dalton almost ran into him again. This was twice now tonight that Michael froze like he'd hit an invisible wall, and both times something terrible waited in front of him. Dalton stepped up beside him. "Michael, talk to me. What do you see?" Michael didn't blink, didn't breathe. He pointed. Dalton raised his flashlight. The beam landed on the mouth of an old abandoned campsite. Half-collapsed tents, rusted tools, broken lanterns, a fire pit long dead. It looked like a place people used 20 years ago and then forgot about, but someone had come back. Someone had disturbed the dirt. Someone had moved things recently. And in the center of the campsite, a boy's jacket. Evan's jacket. Dalton's breath hitched. "No, no." Michael rushed to it, grabbed it with shaking hands, held it to his chest, and screamed into the night. "Evan, where are you?" His voice echoed through the trees. And that's when something moved behind the old tent. A slow, deliberate shift. A shadow that didn't belong. A silhouette rising to full height. Michael saw it first. Dalton saw it next. Cole raised his weapon. The shadow stepped forward. And then, a voice. Low. Calm. Too calm. "He's close." Michael spun toward the voice. "Where? Where is he?" The shadow didn't move. Didn't step out. Didn't reveal a face. "He didn't listen," the voice said. Dalton raised his gun. "Hands where I can see them. Now." The shadow ignored him. "He tried to go home," the figure said. "I told him he couldn't." Michael's entire body shook. "Where is my son?" The shadow tilted its head. "Do you really want to see?" The voice was soft, chillingly soft. "Because once you do, you can't ever go back." That was the moment Dalton realized something terrifying. This man wasn't panicked, not angry, not hiding. He was calm, like he had planned every second of this. "Cole," Dalton whispered, "circle left. Don't break eye contact." Cole nodded and began stepping sideways. The figure spoke again. "You brought so many people. Too many. Show us your hands." Dalton barked. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. "Not tonight." Dalton took half a step forward. "Tell us where Evan Turner is." The shadow didn't move. Instead, something behind the tents did. A soft thud. A weak groan. Barely audible. Michael heard it first, and his heart exploded with new hope. "Evan," he whispered. He rushed forward. "Michael, no!" Dalton roared. But it was too late. Michael sprinted past the tents, pushing aside debris until he reached the back of the campsite, and fell to his knees. "Evan, oh God! Evan!" Dalton and his deputies rushed after him, weapons raised, eyes scanning for threats. But the sight in front of them stole their breath. Evan Turner lay crumpled on the ground, exhausted, bruised, dirty, barely conscious. Not moving much, but alive. Very alive. His eyes fluttered open as Michael lifted him into his arms, sobbing in relief. "Dad!" Evan whispered. "I'm here," Michael choked out. "I'm right here, buddy. I'm not leaving you again." Dalton exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "Get the medics here now," he yelled into his radio. 2 deputies ran to assist. But just as they started lifting Evan, Cole shouted, "Sheriff! He's running!" Dalton spun around. The shadowy figure had bolted into the woods, moving with unnatural speed. "Go! Go! Go!" Dalton ordered, sprinting after him with 2 deputies in tow. Branches snapped. Leaves flew. Flashlights cut through the darkness. The figure was fast, too fast, but the deputies were trained. They stayed close, jumping over fallen logs, sliding down slopes, pushing their legs to full burn. Dalton yelled, "Stop! You're surrounded!" But the man didn't stop. He didn't even look back. He darted between thick trees, down narrow paths, over old roots. Then suddenly, he disappeared. Just vanished into a wall of brush and darkness. Dalton skidded to a stop, panting. Where did he go? Where did he go? Cole checked the ground. "Sheriff, there's nothing. No footprints, nothing." A cold wind rushed across the clearing. Dalton looked into the silent woods. "He's still out here," he whispered. They searched for nearly 20 more minutes before returning to the campsite. By the time they reached the clearing, medics had already arrived. Evan was awake, weak but stable. Michael never let go of his hand. Dalton knelt beside them. "He's safe now," he told Michael quietly. Michael nodded, tears running down his face. "Thank you, all of you." Dalton placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. "We'll get him to the hospital. He's going to be okay." As the medics lifted Evan onto a stretcher, the boy tightened his grip on his father's hand. "Dad," Evan whispered. "Yeah, buddy?" "There was a man," Evan said. He said he needed me. He said the woods chose me, not you." Michael shook his head fiercely. "Don't think about him. You're safe now." But Evan's face scrunched with fear. "He's still out here," he whispered. "He said he'd come back. He said he always does." Michael froze. Dalton froze. Every deputy froze. Evan whispered one more thing, so quietly only his father heard it at first. He said, "This wasn't the first time." Michael's eyes widened. Dalton leaned in. "Evan, what do you mean by that?" Evan swallowed hard. He said, "He's taken boys before." The forest went silent. Even the wind stopped. Dalton straightened slowly, looking into the blackness of the woods. "And we didn't catch him tonight," the sheriff said. Michael looked up at him, fear growing again. "Sheriff, is he going to come back?" Dalton stared into the trees. He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The medics carried Evan toward the ambulance. Michael walked beside him, never letting go of his hand. Deputies packed up evidence, marked areas, photographed everything they could. But even as they worked, every single member of that team looked over their shoulder now and then. Because the woods felt different, like someone was still watching. As the ambulance doors closed, Evan whispered one last thing, his voice trembling. He said he wasn't done." Michael hugged him tightly. Dalton stood in the headlights, the forest at his back. And somewhere in the darkness, a twig snapped. A soft, slow rustle followed. Dalton turned sharply, hand on his gun, eyes searching the trees. But the woods only stared back. Silent. Still. Waiting. And the sheriff knew one thing with absolute certainty. This case wasn't over. Not even close.